Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So, Hare Krishna, we welcome you all for today morning reading. We are on the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 33. What's number 33? If I'm correct. Hopefully, yes. No. Text number 32 actually, right?
33.
Is 32, correct. All right. Atmaupamyena sarvatra samam pashyati arjuna sukham va yadi va dukkam sa yogi paramo mataha. So yesterday I was making a point. This verse is what kind of is a very important verse, and this is what kind of led to a doubt in the mind of Arjuna. It talks about two things. This verse talks about. If you don't want to talk about an application, let's take a look at the translation first. It is said he is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and distress. O Arjuna. So, in this verse, what should be the consciousness of a sadhaka or of a yogi towards the society is being described? Atmaupamyena sarvatra. Very interesting word, Atmaupamyena sarvatra. Sarvatra means everywhere. Samam pashyati Arjuna, to see equally. What it means by that, Atmaupamyena, as you would like others to behave with you, behave with others in the same manner. This is what is being discussed here. Atmaupamyena. In other words, we should learn to empathize with others. So here, at the sadhaka stage, we should have a sense of sensitivity and compassion for others is what being described about here. He is a perfect yogi by comparison to his own self, that is Atmapamena, sees the true equality of all beings. To see the presence of Paramatma in all beings is not possible at our stage. However, at least we can empathize with others. That is what we can practice, empathize with other living entities in both their happiness and distress. Orjan sukham va yadi va dukkham. So other sufferings for a devotee becomes their own suffering, and others' joy becomes their joy. But one who is Krishna conscious, a perfect yogi, he is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God, and the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of the human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, the sincerest friend of all living entities. Somebody on the airport, one of the security guard asked one of Prabhupada's disciples, "Oh, you are an American man. Why are you have taken to an Indian rose, etc.?" Or that was one part of a question. I believe the second part of the question was more precisely, you look so joyful. Something on that line. There was a discussion, but the answer was very profound as part of the conversation. He says, "Yes, I am very happy internally, but simultaneously I'm very distressed also." The security guard asked, "Oh, Swamiji, you look so blissful, but why do you say you're distressed?" He said, "I'm distressed looking at the condition of all of you who, not knowing what is the purpose of human form of life, is wasting the human form of life for chasing after the sense gratification. It is a compassion, or it is this understanding and realization that drives the devotee to go out and share the message of Lord with everyone. First. Second point, here it is mentioned, samam pashyati Arjuna sukham va yadi va dukkham. He sees, he sees the true nature of all beings in both their happiness and distress. In other words, a devotee is one, a God conscious person is one who can never cause distress to others. He is a compassionate person. He is the one who's supposed to help others. So those on the name of God consciousness, or those on the name of God who are causing terrorism in the state, who are causing violence in the name of God, can never be God conscious. Why? Because everyone is my brother and sister on the concept of spiritual plane. That is what is being briefly discussed here. Let's take a look at Prabhupada. The perfect yogi knows that the living beings who is conditioned with the modes of material nature subjected to threefold material miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. So what impels one to take the austerity of preaching? This is what, I mean, this should be the ideal platform. Why we are serving, or why we are going out and distributing books, Vedic literature, or why we are spending so much time and energy on preaching. Should be the mood. Understanding that people are confused, bewildered by the influence of modes of mental nature, I should assist, I should serve them. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world. And thus, such a person is called as best philanthropist, because that is the greatest charity work. And he is the dearest servitor of the Lord. Lord Shri Krishna concludes Bhagavad Gita with that. Na chatasma manisheshu kashin me priya krittamaha. That is the verse, 18.69. In other words, the devotee of the Lord always look to the welfare of all living entities. That's the point I was making. A devotee of the Lord can never cause any violence to others. On the name of God, particularly not. In fact, he looks for the welfare of all living entities. And this way, he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living beings. Here is a contrast between a pure devotee of the Lord and a yogi interested only in his personal elevation. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as a devotee who is trying his best to turn every man toward Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Madhav, where are your batch students? Go and get them. Text number 3. Now Arjuna would ask the question. Arjuna vacha yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatva stitam sthiram. I just don't see any practicality in the discussion we had, my dear Krishna. The process, Ashtanga Yoga, which you have described, is impossible. Why? Ashtanga Yoga begins with controlling the mind. But that's the whole challenge. You're talking about meditation and all that. But we cannot control mind because mind is restless and unsteady. Oh, Madhusudan, the system yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me. If Arjuna is calling Ashtanga Yoga, Hatha Yoga as to be impractical, there's no question for anyone today to say we can practice Hatha Yoga. Otherwise, you're too proud to, or either you're too proud or you're too foolish to claim yourself to be better than Arjuna. I mean, this one statement is enough for me to know that Ashtanga Yoga is not possible in this age. If Arjuna have to say that is impractical and endurable. Now, let me give you one point so that you understand the Arjuna's strength. See, Vyasadeva had instructed Yudhishthira Maharaj to send Arjuna to Indralok to get divine weapon. Now, I don't know how much, what is your understanding of it, but it is not that they were physically carrying the divine weapons on the chariot. The chariot had all kinds of weapons, but the divine weapons were invoked by the mantra. Right? They'll chant the mantra and divine weapon will appear. Imagine you're fighting in a war. You don't probably have much idea of bow and arrow, but you know of the gun. So somebody has pointed a gun towards you, and you have pointed your gun towards him. Whoever shoots first has a potential of killing the enemy, right? Now, there somebody tells you, "Goli marne se pehle Hare Krishna bolo." Chant once Hare Krishna mantra. There's no possibility of you to survive, isn't it? Now, the divine weapons were invoked by mantra. There was a mantra to chant. And I mean, of course, I don't have a reference for it, But somebody was telling me that you had to chant that mantra 108 times before the divine weapon can be invoked. It's not like Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Ho gaya. Chalo, divine weapon aa gaya. I mean, I'm just giving one example. Let's say Narayan Astra will appear because he chanted Hare Krishna mantra. But it's 108 times. Now, this is quite impossible to be able to. We chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra 100 times, it takes almost close to 6 to 7 minutes, isn't it? So now this 100 times looks very difficult, even if not 100 times. Let's say chanting once, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare. Do you have this much time on the battlefield? What I am intending to say here is, these people were extremely, extremely exalted personalities. Now I don't know if I've discussed here, but lately I've been speaking about the art and the science of mantra. Now the mantra has to be properly pronounced. There's a particular meter, there's a particular tone to it. If it is not done that way, the effect of mantra would not happen. Something else will happen. Let's say he's calling Narayan Astra, and if he doesn't pronounce the name of Narayan, he's holding the bow and he's thinking arrow will appear. The arrow is not appearing. You will not survive in this meantime. So that Arjuna is saying here, you have summarized appears, what you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable. Who is saying? Arjuna. One who was who carried divine weapons. That person. Not that some bow and arrow of metal. The one who carried divine weapon is saying, so I hope you're getting the gist of it. Purport. The system of mysticism described by Krishna to Arjuna beginning with the words Suchaudi, ending with the Yog Parama is here being rejected by Arjuna out of feeling of inability. It is not possible for ordinary man to leave home, go to a secluded place in the mountains or jungles to practice yoga in this age of Kali. Particularly COVID time, it has become more difficult. Before COVID, people had good health. After COVID, people are falling sick too easily. We just went for Yatra. Yatra ended, but everyone is having cold. Even after Yatra have concluded everything, we just went to Jaipur. It was not cold at all. It was a little cold. Now imagine now people of today's generation has to go to the forest. You don't have any shelter. You don't have hot water bath. Ho gaya aapka Ashtaki yoga. The present age is characterized by a bitter struggle for a life of short duration. People are not serious about self-realization, even by simple practical means. What to speak of this difficult yoga system, which regulates the mode of living, the manner of setting, selection of place, and detachment of the mind from material engagement. What a beautiful point. Prabhupada is saying, first of all, people are not serious. Somehow, prasadam के बहाने हम उनको प्रोग्राम में खींच के लेकर आते हैं. प्रसादम के बहाने वो आ भी जाते हैं, जैसे तैसे उनको, somehow we encourage them, take Krishna consciousness, practice spiritual life. So totally disinterested. And those who are disinterested people, you tell them go to forest. They say, yes, I'll go for a retreat. And after 2 days, I'll come back. So it is impossible in today's day and time. As a practical man, Arjuna thought it was impossible to follow the system of yoga, even though he was favorably endowed in many ways. I already spoke about his endowments. He belonged to the royal family, he was highly elevated, etc., etc. He was most important from Lord Krishna. 5,000 years ago, Arjuna had much better facilities than we do now. Yet he refused to accept the system of yoga. In fact, we do not find any record in history of his practicing at any time. Therefore, the system must be considered generally impossible in this age of Kali. Of course, it may be possible for some very few rare men. But for the people in general, it is not. It is an impossible proposal. If they were so 5,000 years ago, then what of the present day? Those who are imitating this yoga system in different so-called schools and societies, although complacent, are certainly wasting their time. They're completely in ignorance of the desired goal. Text number 34. Arjuna says, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadradam tasyaham nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkaram. My dear Lord, the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. Oh Krishna, to subdue it, I think is more difficult than controlling the wind. How many of you agree, if you don't agree with anything else, but at least agree with this verse? Yes or no? Hare Krishna. Your self-realization journey has begun. Because at least you're beginning to agree with Krishna with one verse. Purport. The mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes intelligence. Although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence, For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, okay, has to fight so many opposing elements. It is certainly very difficult to control the mind. What would be the greatest opposing element for us? Think about it. So you understand what Prabhupada means here. What is the greatest opposing element for us? Any clues? For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. What would be that opposing elements? So one devotee is saying mobile phone. Yes, distractions. Therefore, one author in America said the world today is not in danger because of WMD, weapons of mass destructions, but is in danger because of weapons of mass distractions. You just log into your tablet or iPad or smartphone with a full pure intention. आज तो book पढ़ेंगे. Online Bhagavad Gita. And we end up spending time on Instagram Reels or WhatsApp messages or Facebook stories, etc., etc. YouTube story, right? Stories on YouTube, somewhere, everywhere. So that's the point. We have to fight so many opposing elements. Very difficult to control the mind. Now, purpose is artificially one may establish a mental equilibrium toward both friend and enemy, but ultimately no worldly man can do so. For this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind. In the Vedic literature, Katha Upanishad said, Atmanam Ritinam Vidhi, Shariram Ratham Evaja, Buddhintu Saratham Vidhi, Manaha Pragraham Evacha, Indriyani Hayanahu, Vishayam Teshu Gocharan, Atmendriya Mano Yuktam, Bhokte Tyahumani Shinaha. The individual is the passenger of the car, the mental body, intelligence is the driver, mind is the driving instrument, and the sense of the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer. As association of the mind and senses, so it is understood by great thinkers. Intelligence is supposed to drive the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's own intelligence. As an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent wind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The greatest month of our deliverance in all humanity. The method prescribed here is Savaimana Krishna Padaravindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna. Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. A simple example, you all would have an experience, let's say you're performing Nirjala Ekadashi. Now, to be able to successfully perform Nirjala Ekadashi is only possible if you keep your mind engaged in chanting the holiness of the Lord. Otherwise, every minute you'll be crying. Mind will be yelling, अरे थोड़ा तो पानी पी ले, प्राण निकले जा रहे हैं, खा नहीं सकता, पानी तो पी ले कम से कम. And the mind will keep on yelling like this. So we all would have an experience when we're doing Nirjala Ekadashi. The more we focus on chanting, or the more we chant. And in fact, it is but natural. Many devotees easily chant 64 rounds because it is survival, question of survival. Otherwise, Nirjala Ekadashi would not happen. So in that circumstance, you would have noticed when you are when you're chanting, first of all, chanting becomes easy. Because you know that there's no other alternative if I want to follow the vow of Nirjala Ekadashi. And second thing, you will see the more the mind is engaged in chanting, you'll see the more mind becomes relaxed gradually. In the beginning, it will put a lot of pressure, but gradually the mind becomes more relaxed. The senses are not much agitated now. Why? Because the senses are given the food by which they get the energy. That is what is mentioned. Only then will there remain no other engagement to agitate the mind, which means the more we engage our mind in serving Krishna or remembering Krishna, to that degree mind becomes peaceful. Text number 35. Lord Shri Krishna gives the solution. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Manodurnikanam Chalam Asabhyasena Dhanteya Vairagena Grihate. Yes, Arjun, I do agree with you. It's very difficult, but there is a way out of it. Abhyasena, by practice, Vairagena, by suitable practice and by suitable attachment. In essence, what it means, yama and niyama. Do's and don'ts for that reason. Don'ts and do, if you want to call it that way. So what is the do's? That is abhyasena. What are the don'ts? That is vairagena. So abhyasena means accept things in your life. Vairagya means give up things which are not favorable for your Krishna consciousness or for your self-realization. Getting it? That is what Abhyasana Kante and Vairagya Chakrihate means here. That's the point in the purport also. Mhm. All right. This is the gist of it. So we'll go ahead for the next verse. Text number 36. असंयतात्मना योगो दुष्प्रापा इति मे मतिः अवश्यात्मना तु यतता शक्यो वाप्तुम् उपायतः. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. For he whose mind is controlled and who strives for appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. So, what is this yama and yava, abhyasena and vairagya that Krishna is speaking about on the path of self-realization? Vairagya means renunciation, means give up. What we need to give up? Meat eating, intoxication, gambling, illicit sex. That's the foremost, and these are the four pillars of dharma. To follow this establishes four pillars of dharma. Abhyasana, accept things. What do you want to accept things? Waking up early in the morning. That's abhyasana, requires a practice. What to accept in our day-to-day life? Chanting the holy names of the Lord. What to get into a practice? Reading habit, hearing habit. Come together, read, hear regularly. This is abhyasana and vairagya for that reason. Okay, text number 36 that we just read, the purport. The Lord declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment or detach the mind from mental engagements can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in mental enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Igniting a fire means Krishna consciousness. Pouring water means sense gratification. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of. Please highlight this. You should mark this for yourself and put it somewhere where you can see it often. Yoga practice without mental control is waste of time. So regulated lifestyle is not an option. It's not a question of choice. It's compulsory for a yogi or a sadhaka. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. And for such people, there won't be any spiritual realization. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly on the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna conscious person easily achieves the results of yoga practice without separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious. All right. So, text number 37. So, when Krishna said, whose mind is not under control, self-realization is a difficult job. So Arjuna began to ponder. Well, matter of concern is controlling the mind is not an easy task. So Arjuna thought, it seems that not everyone would be able to accomplish success within one lifetime. Because just to consider that everyone would be able to control the mind within one lifetime is not really possible. With that as a thought at the back, Arjuna asked a question in the verse number 37. Arjuna vacha ayatihi shraddhayopeto yoga chalitamanasaha aprapya yoga samsiddhim kangvatam Krishna gacchati. O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness, and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? Very appropriate question being asked in terms of, even if you see in our any outreach engagement, in the first initial programs, you'll find many people. And as the day goes by, the number keeps going down. That is what is being asked. The one who is not able to complete the course, what is his gati? What happens to him? You can take it that way. The purport. The path of self-realization is described in Bhagavad Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living end is not this material body, but that is different from it. Fine. These are transcendental, beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge and by the practice of eightfold Bhakti system. Fine. Let's going down the purport. Not the purport. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation, knowledge, and practice of Eightfold yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. Now, why would one may fail? Okay, let's see what purpose is, then we'll talk about. First reason, one may not be sufficiently serious about following the process. So why there would not be a success in the path? One is not serious enough. To pursue the transcendental path, this is highlight, memorize this section, this particular part of the paragraph. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusory energy. Consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. So that's the thing. So we need to be very serious to avoid the allurements. Second point, a conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material nature, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental discipline. Very important. Never we should consider ourselves to be immune now to material infection. Oh, I'm pure now. I will not get victimized. This is called as yoga chalitamanasa, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. So two things. One, we're not serious enough. Second, there's too much allurements today. It's too much actually. I sometimes wonder how wonderful the days were when there were no smartphones. Keypad mobiles were safe. You can't do much with it. And you can easily be detached. And imagine how wonderful the life was when there were no even keypad mobile. Once you're out, you're forgotten. Nobody will bother about you. Nobody can reach you. Imagine how wonderful our life was when there were no phones only. But there's no Prajalpa now. Otherwise, people call across the city to do Prajalpa. Yes or no? Prabhupada once got a call at 12:30 in the midnight. In Los Angeles, the first phone that ISKCON ever had those days. And Prabhupada's room, it rang. Prabhupada was surprised. अरे रात को 12:30 बजे कौन फोन कर रहा है? Prabhupada picked up the call. Hare Krishna. This is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Swami, yeah, something like that introduction. Who is this? And it turned out to be one young disciple from some other part of the country, and not from there, from a different part of the world. So, Swamiji, I called up. Swamiji said, "Oh, why have you called in the middle of the night?" The disciple said, "Swamiji, I just called out to find out how are you doing." Prabhupada said, "In the middle of the night, you have called me out to find out how I'm doing, you fool." Next morning, he called his disciple. He said, "Get this box out of my room. Take it out." Prabhupada never had phone with him. Anywhere he went, he never had phone back in his room. Can you think about it? It's in itself is incredible. The man who was running an international movement, traveling all over the world, how much important communication he would have to handle. Yet Prabhupada only communicated by telegram. After that, he never. And you know what Prabhupada said? This box is a source of prajalpa. That is what Prabhupada said. Only once receiving a call, Prabhupada was so visionary. He knew how this box is going to become a source of prajalpa. Only once he spoke. Of course, after that he spoke, but it is not that he would keep the phone with him to that way. All right. So the two things, we are not serious enough. First, second thing is too much material elements. Wow, very difficult. Text number 38. Kachenavaya vibhrata chinnabhram ivanashyati apratishta mahabaho vimado brahmanapati. Almighty Am Krishna. Does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? Prabhupada. There are two ways to progress. Those who are materialists have no interest in transcendence. Therefore, they have more interest in material advancement. Like that. When one takes to the path of transcendence, one has to cease all material activities and sacrifice all forms of so-called material happiness. If the aspiring transcendentalist fails, then he apparently loses both ways. In other words, he can enjoy neither material happiness nor spiritual success. He has no position. He is like a riven cloud. That's what Arjuna is asking. Oh, he gave on the material sense gratification to practice spiritual life, but he didn't succeed in spiritual life also. What? He becomes a part of a no man land, which means it doesn't belong to anything. What is this gati? Text number 39. Etanme samshayam Krishna chetum marasya sheshadaha tvad anyah samshayas asya chetanahi upapadyate. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. Why, Krishna only? But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. Prabhupada's purport is why Krishna only? Krishna is the perfect knower of past, present, and future. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. That's the only point. Last few lines of the purport. No one is equal to or above Krishna, and certainly the so-called great sages and philosophers with the mercy of the material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is the final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present, future perfectly. But no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna conscious devotees alone can know what is what. Text number 40. Now, Lord Shri Krishna will give the answer to Arjuna's question. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Patanaive Namutra Vinashatasya Vidyate Nahi Kalyana Kritkashit Durgatim Tatagachati. Such a person never gets Durgati. Durgatim Tatagachati, he would never attain Durgati. Nahi Kalyana Kritkashit. Nahi Kalyana Kritkashit. Kashit at any time. Nahi means certainly not. Durgatim Tadagachati will not attain to Durgati. Which person is being discussed about? A transcendentalist. Vinashatasya vidate. There is no loss for him. So Krishna says, Sanaprata, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activity does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. All right. Given the time frame, I'll just read this section and then we'll read the purport tomorrow, actually, because we'll not be able to cover the section. Let's take a look at text number 41. What did Krishna say after that? So first, Krishna says, well, a transcendentalist is never destroyed. He is always protected. Now, transcendentalists can be put in two categories now. One, who got distracted after short practice, or second, who practiced for a long time yet he couldn't succeed. So what happens to them? Text number 41. Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvatihi samaha suchinam shrimatam gehe yoga brashto abhijayate. Abhijayate takes his birth. So this was talks about those who have got distracted after a short practice of Krishna consciousness. What happens to them? Prapya punya kritam lokan. They take birth. Where? In the planets of the past living entities. Ushitva Shashvatihi. Ushitva Shashvatihi. Samaha. And they dwell there, Shashvati, hundreds or many Samaha years. Suchina Srimatam Gehi. And then they're born in the family of Srimatam Gehi. Yoga Brashta Vijayate. So the unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment of the planets of the past living entities, born into a family of righteous people, or into a family of rich aristocracy. Text number 42. What happened to one after long practice of yoga? Atava yoginam eva kule bhavati dhimadam etadi durlabhatram loke janma yadidrisham. What happens to one who just could not, some way or other, could not complete his journey? If unsuccessful after long practice yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalism. So such a yogi takes birth in the family of a devotee who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. Therefore, Prabhupada said, the kids of the devotees are no ordinary. We don't know which all devtas have appeared through our congregation. Text number 43. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam lavade paurvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuya samsiddho kurunandana. So, on taking such a rare birth, the divine consciousness, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life and again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success as son of Guru, like that. So, after taking birth in a life in the family of transcendentalists, he makes attempt again to proceed further. Text number 44. पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनेव ह्रियते हि अवशोऽपि सा जिज्ञास्वपि योगस्य शब्दा ब्रह्मात्मति वर्तते. By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogi principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of scriptures. So, such a high birth indicates that a person, an individual, from his childhood, without any reason or cause, would be attracted towards the spiritual culture and practice. That is the point. He would have. It's mentioned, even without seeking. He is not seeking. It's not he is making an endeavor to know about it, but he is naturally attracted towards spiritual culture and practice. Text number 45. प्रयत्ना यतमनास्तु योगी संशुद्ध किल्बिषः अनेक जन्म संसिद्धस्ततो याति पराम गतिम. And when the yogi engages with the sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contamination, ultimately achieving perfection from many, many bursts of practice, he attains the supreme goal. And now Lord Shri Krishna concludes text number 46. तपस्विभ्यो अधिको योगी ज्ञानिभ्योऽपि मतोऽधिकः कर्मिभ्यस् चाधिको yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. A yogi is greater than a mystic, greater than a priest, and greater than the fruit worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Until now, tasmad, yudhisva, get up and fight. Very interesting. Now Krishna is tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Arjuna, in all conditions, be a yogi. A yogi? Which yogi, my dear Lord? Krishna says, text number 47. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratma shradavani bhajate mam same yuktatamo mataha. According to me, that yogi is the best of the yogi, which Arjuna, I want you to become one who always remembers me with faith and never forgets me. Like that, 6th chapter concludes, 7th chapter will begin. So we'll read the purports. The purports are a little long. If you all can read at your date today, that will also help us to quickly go through this set of verses here. So I believe we have to read the purport from text number 40, text number 40 onwards. So last 7 slokas purport, we'll read the little long purports. So a homework for all of you to read out the purports so that we can do a quick summary tomorrow before we begin our discussion. All right. With that, I guess our time is complete. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada की जय, श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय. आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आज के इस रीडिंग कार्यक्रम में भाग लेने के लिए.